Wait a moment!
I won't lose.
Yes.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here in the first place. Here being a double entendre. One being poor old Valter being thrown to the wolves. Or is he? And second, if you've followed my channel long enough, you might remember that I used to make AR videos, until I decided not to, because I felt that it was too much for me to handle. Trying to balance all facets of content creation, in addition to my life outside of the game, just caused me undue stress. I settled on monthly Abyssal Clears instead, as a healthy pace of hobbyist content creation, and because Abyssals, which are PvE, are an aspect of the game I still enjoy without drawback. Any microtransactional PvP mode, on the other hand, to a degree comes with it a pay gap that forces the meta down players' figurative throats and have them spend in-game currency, free or otherwise, on fully decked out units and skills for inheritance, assuming you want to perform well against and keep up with the rest of the sentient player base. The disparity of such a gap becomes more evident as you approach higher tiers, with its occupants being primarily big spenders and those who have dedicated their playstyle and in-game currencies to keeping up with the meta. So what's the point of talking about something that's well-established knowledge by now? It's my roundabout way of saying that I'm not as fond of phase PvP modes as I used to be, and segue to introducing myself and my playstyle to viewers who aren't as familiar with me. Also, because I needed a more fruitful way to channel my salt and rage from having to combat the meta shitshow that is Summoner Duels with my theme teams. I consider myself more of an old school kind of player, in which I have an appreciation and practice for creativity and innovation. I like to explore and discover the possibilities for myself, rather than primarily relying on outsourced opinions and information to be at the forefront of my gameplay. I believe that by purposely applying creative restrictions on myself, that would force me to think outside of the box, and as a result, come up with unique solutions and team compositions. One such creative restriction was by adopting a favoritism style of gameplay, in which I was to primarily use characters belonging to a specific faction. I chose FE7 by virtue of nostalgia, as Lyn and the Blazing Blade were my first FE character and game exposures in the Fire Emblem franchise. I also decided to add FE6 into the mix, since they were chronologically connected and occurred in the same geographical setting. Despite my decision, I was careful to not pigeonhole myself into only getting familiar with Olymp characters and their skills, as I would have to be able to use them competently against the established meta and eventually adopt external skills via skill inheritance. An apt comparison would be choosing a main and secondaries while studying their matchups against other characters in a fighting game. A fun side goal that stemmed from this endeavor was to fill my barracks with every free-to-play +10 Olymp hero, Grail units notwithstanding, because of how limited Grails are, unfortunately. Another way I did this was to not heavily rely on meta characters and strategies to help keep me on my toes and develop better performance in situations with little margin for error. Such restrictions included the meta which evolved over time, such as refreshers, units with strong, fully decked out kits, like more recent legendary or mythic heroes, brave heroes, specific units like Fettle Guard, dual harmonic units, ascended heroes, and new waves of mechanics such as damage reduction, save skills, increased mobility with little to no trigger conditions, such as Legendary Sigurd, Kanto, Pathfinder, and Opening Retainer. It's not as if I wasn't to use them at all, just not to be overly reliant on them was my goal. And the third came in the form of Aether Raid's offense, which had its own set of creative restrictions, in that in order to score well, you had to occupy 2 of 5, now 6 slots of your team composition with Mythic units. Enticed by the various limited rewards you could earn, which scale with your performance, I decided to make an exception from my usual favoritism style of gameplay, for the sake of building more of my favorite units. I focused on rolling for offense mythics rather than defense mythics, since you always earn a positive net gain in points when you both score the max on offense and lose the max on defense per match each day. This way, I wouldn't have to sacrifice too much of my orbs that were originally going to Lyn and her compatriots. And while I have spent money on the game, I have also played since day one, seldom missing a day, and had my gacha priorities set to rolling mostly for my favorite characters, rather than rolling for the meta. As a result, the only plus 10 exclusives, or 5-star exclusives, rather, that I have are my Lyns and OG Ninian. This mindset meant that I would try to approach AR as resourcefully as possible. I tried to not roll for ether rates more than what was necessary, being 2 mythics for scoring, and ideally not rolling for specific units and or skills for inheritance if possible. I didn't roll for light mythics at first, since eventually we were given 2 to 3 for free as the game progressed. As you can see, I only have the original unmerged free copies of Air, Peony, and Ash, as well as the Uller that I rolled out of necessity for transitioning to the Gen 2 AR phase, which allows me to run a 6-slot offense. For early Astra, I rolled Naga when she was released, and Altina when she was released. The other mythics and copies that I have were a result of free handouts, one Altina from A Hero Rises, and Reginn from the start of book 4 or 5, whichever book she was from, to be honest. I don't follow the story. But another exception was if they had an overlap with the other units that I had my eyes on. For example, Plumeria and another copy of Reginn on Legendary Lilina's banner. One exemption to my controlled rolling and spending for mythics was if the mythic in question fit my favoritism criteria, which is why I made efforts to acquire Bramamond and Elamine, rather than acquiring other potent mythics such as Not and Thor. Bram is the only defense mythic I used to date. And again, the idea was to approach this mode with as little gacha investment as I could muster and still consistently perform well. Meaning I would try to use heroes and skill inheritance available to all players without having to spend orbs. Brave heroes are usually solid investments, but for my definition and purposes, not everyone chose the same free Brave hero per CYL. I did, however, end up rolling for 1 unit in the gacha early on, being Velouria, out of necessity to make my Galeforce teams more consistent with reduced cooldown overall. I'd like to think that as a result of my pioneer spirit and creative restrictions, I was able to think outside of the box and come up with my own unique, consistent Galeforce strategies in AR, primarily Astra. Going all the way back to pre-Plumeria AR, Light already had suitable support mythics in Peony, a dancer, and Air, who was the Wings of Mercy beacon of the coined Air Force team. Astra, on the other hand, had no such support yet, and I felt that this was the perfect gateway to start brainstorming and crafting a team of my own, while remaining relatively free-to-play friendly. After all, there's not much point to imposing creative restrictions on yourself if you're just going to spend money to solve your problems. And oftentimes, it's what people don't expect or account for that can give you the edge. After carefully considering the factors present in Astra and Anima season at the time, I found what I considered to be the team best suited towards balancing proper scoring with a bonus unit, reduced cooldown for consistent Galeforce triggers, and field and splash damage application, both for setting up my Wings of Mercy beacon and softening up the enemy defense. The team was composed of the Asker Trio and Fjorm bonus unit rotation of whoever among the 4 was the bonus unit that week, ally support Velouria, with whoever was the bonus unit that week, and Velouria being one of the premier cornerstone units to Galeforce comp, obviously, a 5-star +4 Kagero with Ouch Pouch and IP support as the Wings of Mercy beacon mobile bolt tower, and 2 mythics. And aside from Velouria and the mythics, the other units and skills necessary were all available for free. Instead of rolling for Pulse Smoke or Witchy Wand to counter the IP meta at the time, I made use of the free Marissas and countered IP with some IP of my own. Other skills such as Wings of Mercy, Death and Darting Blow, and the Slaying Weapons were all available in the free-to-play pool. Heavy and Flashing Blade, being sacred seals at the time, also helped make the setup work well. Although it's outdated now, you can see more of how I played this team way back when in some of the clips being shown as I speak, as well as in my past AR offense videos in the playlist on my channel. You can browse those for video commentary and the description and comment sections there for insight on how I ran that team, as well as how it came to be if you're interested. Or you can comment with questions here. As time passed, Gen 2 Mythics were introduced, the meta evolved, and as a result, I also had to adapt and change my team accordingly. Defense setups nowadays apply a lot more pressure, and they're quicker and easier to trigger map activation. So, taking some actions and turns to test traps, which I did with my previous setup, wasn't going to be as reliable of an option now, especially considering that I don't use dancers and have a limited number of actions to work with, which results in a smaller margin of error. I haven't used dancers in Astra until I shifted the focus of bonus units from the Astra trio to Astra Mythics as part of my transition to the Gen 2 AR offense. The exception now being Plumeria whenever she's the bonus mythic. As I previously mentioned, I opted not to rely on duo units as they can be inconsistent with the presence of the duo's hindrance defense structure, nor did I want to rely on Disarm Trap as an option when considering free-to-play strategies, since there is currently only one Disarm Trap combat manual in Spring Paula. That Disarm Trap would have likely been given to Air for Air Force during light seasons, or Ninja Lin, who was a duo unit shortly released before the advent of Seiros, Ninja Lin being released back in December of 2020, and Seiros in January of 2021. And yes, while I did roll for Ninja Lin myself, I haven't used her in AR aside from her initial bonus seasons, since again I primarily roll and play for the sake of favoritism and not the meta. And under the assumption of a worst case scenario for a free-to-play player where they don't have another Disarm Trap available for Astra season, or struggles to consistently use Ninja Lin and other duo harmonic units on offense due to duo's hindrance, I sought to come up with a reliable comp that didn't have to rely on either of those. So before we get to today's showcase, I thought to briefly go over the team and explain each unit's role, as well as how this strategy works in general. I came up with an initial draft of this team shortly after the release of Seiros, as seen in the clip here, and there will be a link to the actual video provided in the description below. And I've surprisingly made little changes to it since then, and have been consistently using this comp in Astra Vault of Heaven. I have opted for a few premium skills that are not available for free, from limited combat manuals or Grail units and the like, as an attempt of leveling the playing field a bit against higher merged defense units, since most of my sweepers are free low to no merges. However, there are certainly more affordable alternatives for these units, which I'm going to detail for you now. First up, we have Valter. Valter's role is the initiator and is one of 3 Galeforce units on this team. He serves as the Wings of Mercy beacon, which he becomes by taking action twice, thanks to Galeforce, and losing at least 50% of his HP, regardless of counterattacks, courtesy of his status as one of the original Fury 7 heroes. In my opinion, he was the ideal unit for this role at the time, due to there being a limited number of heroes who had access to a Fury weapon, since the Fury Sacred Seal didn't exist yet. The combined factors of his free-to-play availability, his weapons, slaying effect, and refine, his flyer status, and ideal stat line when unmerged, meant that with Velouria ally support, he would be able to trigger Galeforce off his first engagement, and have the bulk necessary to stomach a hit if need be. Wyvern Flight was a nice B-slot option since it suits his stat line, and it wasn't too expensive to acquire, as you could get it off a 4-star melody when she appeared on the same banner as Guinevere and Deke. I kind of forgot what the name of the banner was, but I'll probably have it up on the screen for you. I realize that this comp isn't perfect, as he can be stopped with some of the more recent skills and units being capable of inflicting guard or near save. However, there are still possible workarounds with a number of other factors, such as running the Heavy Blade Sacred Seal to help gain charge, even against guard effects. Alternatively, running a Flow B skill to allow Valter to make follow-up attacks, and even relying on your offense buildings, such as the Safety Fence and Bolt Tower, to help set up and soften up the enemy, to make it possible for Valter to punch through a weakened near-save armor. Of course, any unit and team is only as good as the amount you invest into it, but as far as inexpensive investment goes, this build and team works pretty consistently against defenses without common hard counters to Galeforce comps. After all, not everyone has a unit like Thor, who solves all of those problems through her base kit alone. While Fury 4 is a must, it is currently available on 2 of the limited combat manuals, being Valentine's Grail and Spring Est. Other skill alternatives include the Near Trace B skills, Chill B skills, Flow B skills, and Rain C skills, as well as the Heavy Blade Sacred Seal. I opted for a Savage Blow in the C slot for most of my attackers as a cheap way to help soften up the defense for the other attackers where possible. Do note that if you opt not to change Valter's traits, you cannot give him Dragon Flowers, as that will put him above 56 HP when run alongside a maximum of 2 Mythics. If you do change his traits, you can give him up to 5. Velouria's role is to provide cooldown reduction for her ally support partner, in this case, Valter, and serve as a Galeforcer herself. In my team comp, I opted not to run the Heavy and Flashing Blade Sacred Seals on these 2 units, as stat checks can be rather dodgy at times, so I generally fall back on a different offense team against defenses that have guard and or near save. Heck, even Gatekeeper, just as a personal preference. I gave my Velouria Times Pulse and Deathblow 4 from an OG Lizithia, or pre-time skip Lizithia, but if you don't have or don't want a fodder Times Pulse, Velouria will need to run one of the Blade Sacred Seals. Wings of Mercy is the B slot run by all attackers on the team aside from Valter, and she is unfortunately 5-star exclusive, so if you don't have her, you might be able to test out alternate units with appropriate cooldown reduction, such as the new Duo Krabin, New Year's Alphonse, and Raphael, and see if you can make a different take on this team work. But in my opinion, the less exclusive units you have to roll for, the less your orb stash and wallet hurts. The next unit is Navarre, who is also free, and is the ideal 3rd Galeforcer thanks to his reduced special cooldown from his refined Scarlet Sword. He will need to run Infantry Pulse to provide Velouria with enough special cooldown reduction to allow her to trigger Galeforce in a single hit. He is well suited for this role due to his natural bulk being greater than that of Velouria's, but he will also need to run a Blade Sacred Seal to ideally trigger Galeforce in a single hit as well. In this video, however, I opted to swap him out for the previous Astra season with Hatari Karla as the bonus unit, since she has the same special cooldown reduction in her perf, Dry Blade Lance. She's also one of the factors for me making this video, since I get to showcase an awesome Alib hero. Then you've got your 2 Mythics for scoring. Mythic 1 is Reginn, as your free Gen 2 Astra Mythic. She provides access to the 6th team slot, and some much appreciated firepower against one of the more tanky units on defense. Her Canto is also very useful for trapping or moving outside the attack range of defense teams, considering that this team has a lower action count compared to teams running, say, Dancers. Depending on the situation, I may not even use her to attack, but to break obstacles in Canto, so that I can clear a path for my Valter to initiate from. You can also try to build her for Galeforce, it's entirely up to you. I just kept her Aether Shell as a result of my minimalist investment mindset. I opted for Savage Blow over Panic Smoke since I initiate on turn 1 most of the time, before the defense teams get a chance to apply field buffs. Blade Session is a hard-hitting and suitable Sacred Seal since Reginn almost always moves 3rd or later in this strategy. At least one positional assist, if not 2, move first to help Valter get into position, followed by Valter himself attacking and falling into Wings of Mercy range. Your second Mythic is going to be your bonus unit, unless Reginn is the bonus Mythic, and likely the only units you may have to roll extensively for. Based on who I have, I generally like to run Naga followed by Plumeria, although Thor is a strong option if you have her. And Naga provides crucial dragon effectiveness against Seiros, while Plumeria provides extra utility in actions as a dancer. The second Mythic never attacks and is instead relegated to using a positional assist to help get Valter into a favorable initiating position. As such, I thought support-oriented builds would be preferable on them. So with Naga, I built her as a res-stacking sabotage bot based on Plumeria's base kit, with some help from an extra Plumeria that I had rolled on Legendary Lilina's banner. The field debuffs on the enemy may help Valter pad his stats thanks to Cursed Lance's activation condition of field debuffs on the enemy. This build also works fairly well considering that my Naga is plus res, although she can simply run her inherent chill speed or even chill defense if you don't have more premier skill inheritance options. Plumeria is run the same way as Naga, with the exception being that I afford her some more mobility around Valter via the Flyer Formation Sacred Seal, since she doesn't have Divine Fang and opts to use Attack Tactic as a support C skill instead. This 6th unit was the culmination of my final draft of this team comp, and after testing this team out for a bit, I found that specific maps, like Spring Breeze for example, oftentimes liked to shore obstacles up against the offense to limit mobility, and was often paired with stifling pressure from cavalry units, and meant that I needed a second support which could be used to break obstacles or provide another positional assist which would allow me to initiate on turn 1. Looking at the current members of the team, I have Valter, Flyer, Velouria and Navarre, or in this case Hatari Karla, all of whom are infantry, Reginn, a cavalry, and a flying mythic. At this point, I was using Attack Tactic for buffs, and I preferred to keep it that way, so it meant that I could only choose a cavalry or armor support. Cavalry was the no-brainer since I needed all the mobility I could get, and taking into account how I initially moved the starting positions of my units to best take advantage of buffs, which now include defense and speed tactic, and the likelihood of which lane I have Valter initiate from, generally not being lanes 1 or 6, meant that this support cavalry would have to be able to start in lanes 1 or 6 and break an obstacle in front of Valter. As such, it was imperative that this unit be ranged so that they could break an obstacle in lane 2 or 5 from lanes 1 or 6 respectively, when considering my limited mobility at the start. And since this unit isn't oriented towards combat, they don't have to be built or have a stat line for combat. Well, you get the point by now, right? Besides, when was the last time you saw Merlinus being used on Galeforce team? That's a hard flex. After a little more testing, I saw both the appeal of Smite and Repo as the positional assist of choice. This ultimately depends on the layout of the defense map, how many offense structures you run, and where they're placed. But if the lane you want to initiate from is occupied by an offense structure behind, Repo is the suitable alternative. However, in most cases where the tile traps hug the enemy defense, Smite is absolutely necessary on your second mythic, in which case this 6th ranged cavalry Repo unit has to have Canto to clear the tile behind Valter for the second mythic to smite from. For me, I was fortunate enough to get Summer Mercedes early and capitalize on her attack res far trace, where I have her start on the tile adjacent to Valter move 2 spaces in front, well, move 2 spaces to the tile in front of Valter, repo him up, and then use the remaining movement to canto away. I still use Merlinus in most situations, but I have a second team where I run Summer Mercedes instead to increase my chances of a successful Galeforce clear. If you don't have a unit like her, you don't have to sweat it, and you can still make a double Smite team work more often than not. So I think that just about covers my explanation of the team. God, I'm tired of speaking, even with a script in front of me. God, this is not my thing. Well, anyway, let's get to the juicy bit now, shall we?
Here we go!
That man's an imposter! That man is the imposter!
Coming back to this freeze frame, what happened here was that I rematched somebody who beat my defense out of impulse, shall we say. And when I took a look at this person's defense at first, I started kind of freaking out a bit, because there were a decent number of highly merged meta units, and I actually really wanted to use my Galeforce setup against this team, but being as limited and minimal investment as it is meant that the only win condition I could, well, tell from initial inspection of the defense map was for me to land on the lightning trap in front of Winter Lizithia, and for it to be the actual trap, and for it to do at least 30 damage, so that Valter could slip past Winter Ephraim's Special Fighter after a Savage Blow, and have enough
Where to?
attack to finish Winter Ephraim off without receiving a counterattack.
I must set an example.
Entertain me.
What do you want? Ha!
Wait a moment.
Yes. Entertain me. A feast.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah!
As you see fit. Where to? I must set an example.
I hunger.
What do you want?
Entertain me.
That's funny.
Just like Fafnir.
mustn't be layabout.
Yes. I hunger. A feast. I hunger.
What do you want? That's funny. Okay. What do you want? Ha! That's funny.
Over here? This is it for you!
I must set an example. Where to? As you see fit.
Yeah!
Okay. Ha!
Oh no!
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Wait a moment! Wait a moment!
Entertain me. Ha! A feast.
I won't lose. This is it for you.
That's funny.
As you see fit.
I do.
Okay. What do you want?
I must set an example.
Yes.
What do you want?
Mustn't be layabout!
What is your desire?
Over here?
I hunger.
As you see fit. As you see fit.
feast.
I must set an example.
What is your desire?
That's funny. Yeah.
Mustn't be layabout.
Where to?
It will be done.
That's a lot of damage! Wait a moment.
That's funny.
Entertain me.
I must set an example.
No touching! Mustn't be layabout.
Yes. Entertain me. A feast.
That's funny.
Where to?
I won't lose. This is it for you.
As you see fit. I must set an example. Where to?
What do you want? Ha! Okay. That's funny.
Yeah.
As you see fit.
And for this last match, I was up against a defense setup which shored all of their obstacles up against the defense team pretty much, so it rendered it practically impossible for me to initiate on turn 1. And so I just kind of lost the intent to go through this with my Galeforce team, because technically I feel like it still would have been possible if I
Close your
took
eyes.
some turns to break down the obstacles first.
I'll get you
But
going.
I just decided to use my legendary Lyn because I haven't used her yet.
Let's see now.
Yeah, this is just a sort of
What's the plan?
bonus, unrelated match to the whole concept of this video, pretty much. So, yeah, just sit back and relax.
Over here?
I will go.
It will be done.
I won't lose. I'll do it. A dream.
Taking aim.
There is always a light.
My turn?
Yeah.
Taking aim. I'll hit my mark.
Yes.
Onward.
Why not?
What's the plan?
speak.
What's your plan?
Taking aim.
Over here?
Onward.
What is your desire? It will be done.
What's the plan? Aim well and victory is assured.
Close your eyes. I'll get you going.
Let's see now.
Onward.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is your desire?
Taking aim.
And there we have it. I hope that this video was both educational and entertaining to you, as it was entertaining for me to make. If you're paying attention to my score as the week progresses and my score here at the end of the week, you'll notice that I did fall short of tier 38, which is the minimum to stay in Vault of Heaven. Some people get to tier 39, good for them. For me, it was the case of not having invested in anima defense mythics and building a team around them, as well as having little to no merges on my Astra mythics. But given my preferred style of play overall in FEH, it doesn't really come as a surprise to me, so I'm not too bothered by it, to be honest. At some point in this game, I kind of hope that they'll eventually release an anima defense mythic from a lib, ideally Athos or Roland. I'm thinking those are two of the more memorable of the 8 legends, I would say. But yeah, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll make another video like this in the future. No concrete schedule, but yeah.